What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Bolt Action Chargers. My name is Eli. Today, I had to take a break from talking about the Chargers because unfortunately, the rest of the AFC West has been pretty active. So today, as a totally unbiased, definitely mature, extremely professional Chargers fan, we are going to react and probably make fun of the Broncos, Chiefs, and Raiders. And let me say this right now. Some of these teams made some pretty decent moves, which is pretty rude. The AFC West never lets the Chargers relax for 5 seconds. So, starting off with Denver, they went ahead and re-signed running back J.K. Dobbins to a 2-year deal. Not super upset about this. I don't think J.K. is going to be able to make it through a full season in his whole career without getting some sort of injury. We've obviously seen that. I like J.K., but this one honestly does not scare me too much. Another signing that they made was linebacker Alex Singleton. They re-signed to another 2-year deal. This one I saw a lot of mixed reaction from Broncos fans on Twitter. They seem to have some beef with Alex Singleton, which is kind of funny that this is one of the only signings that they've made this offseason. Their leading tackler last season, but I saw a lot of people commenting about how he misses a lot of tackles. He's never really in the right spot. So I guess chemistry-wise, they're keeping a guy in their locker room that they've had, that they respect internally. But it was funny to see a lot of Broncos fans really upset that he was kind of their only move so far. Big losses. They are missing out on John Franklin Myers. He is being signed by the Tennessee Titans. Big interior defensive lineman for them. I think this is going to hurt a lot of what they like to do. They like to rush the passer. They were pretty good at it last year. So having a guy that was a run stopper who helped those two edges, you lose somebody in the defensive line, that will affect their defense, hopefully for the worse. And that was great to see as a Chargers fan. I love seeing them lose somebody like that because there was some outcry for Broncos fans letting him walk. He did get a pretty decent contract from the Titans. The Broncos have money to spend, so I think they just kind of missed out on John Franklin Myers, and I think this is going to hurt him pretty good next year. So love seeing that. Dre Greenlaw, they released him after 1 year. Obviously injured a ton last year, but great linebacker. We saw the production that he had on a very successful 49ers team 2 years ago before signing with the Broncos. So I thought this was weird that they didn't give him another chance. He didn't get a huge contract. He was signed right away again by the 49ers. Something internally, maybe he just didn't want to come back to the Broncos. You never know what those conversations are like, but odd to see him go. And a lot of Broncos fans super upset to see him leave as well. So we're laughing at the Broncos there. Obviously, going into next season, thinking Bo Nix is Peyton Manning. I don't have a ton of confidence in Bo Nix.
Boverthrows.
I love that the Broncos fans are infatuated with him because I think he's a super mid quarterback. Makes a lot of mistakes. I mean, he makes some throws, but what quarterback in the NFL doesn't make some throws? So I think he'll be back and healthy next season, but I'm not super scared of Bo Nix. He's obviously Justin Herbert's little brother. Feels like he wants to be just like him. Whatever. I'm not scared of Bo Nix. Sean Payton is acting like he personally discovered quarterback development, which is hilarious. Him and Bo Nix. I do think there's something to look at when he disclosed his injury history and Bo Nix kind of clapped back at him. So I think that's a funny situation that we'll have to monitor. I wouldn't want to play for Sean Payton. So I feel like Bo is the same way. We've seen him arguing with each other on the sideline. So any kind of turmoil, any kind of house divided action that we can have in the Broncos is great to see as a Chargers fan. So I think the Broncos will take a step back next season. Tons of one-score games. I've seen this from the Broncos fans themselves. They were very close to losing a lot of games and not having the season that they had last year. Obviously carried by the defense. Losing that John Franklin Myers, I think, is going to hurt them in that regard. But I think they take a step back. I'm more scared of the Chiefs next season. I know they've got some injuries, obviously, to Patrick Mahomes, but I think we're going to see the Broncos fall back below the Chiefs next season. Obviously, my prediction is the Chargers are going to win the AFC West. I really hope that it's a dumpster fire in Denver next year. I can't lie. Them and the Raiders fighting for that last place spot is going to be hilarious because of the hope that the Broncos fans currently have. They've got a lot of holes. They've got a questionable quarterback. They've got a Toll head coach, and I just do not like the Broncos fans. I hated watching them do good last season, but almost no moves. I think they're one of the only teams, if not the only team, who has not signed an outside free agent, which is, I kind of see it both ways. They are looking at last season kind of like Joe Ortiz did, and like 11 wins, pretty good, Pop. I really hope they get complacent and they just start losing those one-score games like we saw with the Chiefs last year. You know, they went from having that miracle season to just losing way too many. Yeah, whatever, you know. I hate the Broncos. Next, let's talk about the Raiders. What an offseason for the Raiders. I'm kind of upset, you know, as a Chargers fan, seeing that the Max Crosby trade fell through and he's going to be playing back in a Raiders uniform. I wanted him out of the division. Insane edge. I mean, he's an amazing player, completely a Raider through and through. So them making moves because they thought they were getting rid of Max Crosby and then getting him back, ultimately I think is going to be better for them. I'm not super scared of Fernando Mendoza throwing it to Jalen Naylor. I don't think that's a huge recipe for success. You know, I don't think that the Raiders are all of a sudden fighting for the top of the division. But I did think it ended up kind of landing in their favor. You know, it made them spend some money, and then they also are keeping Max Crosby. So, I don't really love what happened with the Raiders as a Chargers fan. I think they kind of came out on top despite all of the turmoil and the chaos that's going on in that organization. Fernando Mendoza, good kid. I liked watching him at Indiana, but I don't think that he's going to come into the NFL and just completely light it up. I think he has some panic issues when things start to break down, and that offensive line is going to break down. I know that they went and signed Tyler Linderbaum, 3 years, $81 million, $60 million guaranteed. Everybody in the league, it felt like, was in the Tyler Linderbaum sweepstakes. And so the fact that the Raiders went out and just locked him up was pretty surprising to me. I didn't love seeing that. But they have a lot of holes on that offensive line. And so unless they kind of split up Tyler Linderbaum and he plays 5 different offensive line positions, they still have holes. They're not going to be able to completely protect signing one player a ton of money like this. I don't care who it is. But alas, they did get Tyler Linderbaum. They signed edge Kwity Paye, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, and then previously mentioned wide receiver Jalen Naylor, all as kind of that fire grab once they did end up trading Max Crosby. But none of those players I feel like are super big game changers. They have a lot of issues on the defensive side of the ball. Yes, they got better. Do I think they're closing the gap completely with the Chargers and the other teams? Frankly, no, I don't. So we are sleeping on the Raiders. You know, I think they could still have a terrible season next year, but I do think that they made some steps in the right direction. Don't like seeing that. It is what it is. There's the Raiders free agency. Next would be the Chiefs. Unfortunately, we have to talk about the Chiefs. You know, I don't love the Kenneth Walker move. They signed a great running back. You know, I do think that they have some question marks on the offensive line as well. So signing a great running back is a step in the right direction, but it also doesn't just solve all your offensive line problems. They do have the Patrick Mahomes injury that they have to worry about. Will he play starting the next season? Is he going to miss some games? Big question mark. A lot of money they gave to Kenneth Walker. It's about, I think, $15 million a year for what they're giving him, the 3-year deal. It's a lot for a running back. So he is their only running back. They lost out on Isaiah Pacheco, whatever. I don't know the status of Kareem Hunt. Decent, I guess, backup running back to Kenneth Walker. They really are acting like Kenneth Walker just fixes everything. They also signed defensive tackle Chris Tonga from the Patriots. Good player. I think they'll utilize him really well on that line next to Chris Jones. That's going to be something to deal with as Chargers fans next year. They also signed a tight end. What's his name? Travis Kelce. whoever that is, whatever, a $12 million deal just to get Travis Kelce back in the building so he can drag Taylor Swift to some games. It's really what I feel like they're paying for at this point. Hopefully they force feed him next year. I think he's got a record to break or something like that I saw. He's not very good anymore. Not a huge game changer. He's not the Charger killer that we knew him to be a few years ago. They lost two huge pieces of their defense. Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson. Two starting corners. Great defensive players for them the last few years. I think that's going to hurt. I think they are really going to feel the effects of losing those two corners. The Chiefs have a track record of being able to find corners in the draft. So I do think that that's going to be a target for them because it has to be. Hopefully they miss a little bit, at least not hit as hard as they have with the last two times they've drafted these corners. So I did love seeing them both leave. So hopefully Justin Herbert's able to just absolutely pick them apart. We've got some good receivers that can beat the man next year. Notably Trey Harris. I think he could have some big games against the Chiefs next season, being able to get separation and not having glue stuck to him like Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson. Obviously, Trent McDuffie was more of a slot cornerback, so look out for Lad McConkey as well, being able to get open and make some big plays, do some damage against the Chiefs next year. So, I mean, if I'm ranking the AFC West teams off seasons next year, the Broncos, I think they take a huge step back. The Raiders, I think they finally they were forced to make some good moves, and it ultimately worked out in their favor, but I'm not scared of the Raiders either. The Chiefs look a little bit too self-aware. I think the Chiefs are going to be all right, and meanwhile the Chargers are just sitting there asking, can we have a season where everything doesn't just implode on us? Can people's ligaments and things stay intact and not explode everywhere? So that's really all I'm asking. And if that happens, I think the Chargers will run away with this division and do some damage in the playoffs next year. I know that's what we're all hoping for. We need to see that playoff win and run. And I think if we get over the hump of winning that first playoff game, look out. We are not a team that anybody wants to face. So yeah, please comment. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Who are you most scared of in our division next year? Do you agree with me that the Broncos take a step back and it's still the Chiefs that we have to worry about? And are we all still laughing at the Raiders? Thank you for tuning in. This has been Bolt Action Chargers. Bolt up.